Hi, Courtney here of Creations by Courtney, the place where you'll find size-inclusive garment patterns, accessories, as well as tutorials, so I can help the modern crocheter curate the handmade closet. So we're here today with a tutorial for a square, which is something that I've designed a few times over the years, and I'm super excited for this one as this is part of a collaboration for a blog hop because in August is National Granny Square Day. So today I'm going to be using a size I Furls hook that's 5.5 millimeters and some worsted weight for my stash. This one specifically is King Cole's Acorn Aran. This is such a fun yarn. It is comprised of 80% acrylic, 20% wool, and like the color is just so much fun. So once we are done, we're gonna have a lovely square like this. So grab your yarn, grab your hook, and let's get started. We are going to start with a magic circle, and there's a few ways that you can do this, but the way that I like to do it is that I like to wrap around twice. And I always do that backwards. I always forget I need to have the tail to the outside. Sometimes I've done it with one loop, but I really like the tightness that you get with two loops. So I take it off of my finger, I put the hook through the middle, and I pull up a loop and I yarn over and pull through, and this is to secure the center. And for me, I prefer to work with chainless starting double crochet stitches rather than doing the chains. For me, it just creates a nicer look. So we're going to do, so pull up a loop, yarn over, always hold your finger on that loop to keep it from unwinding. You insert your hook through the middle, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then we're going to yarn over, pull through two, yarn over, pull through two, and that's the chainless starting double crochet. So now we're just going to do two more double crochets. All right, and so when you look at that, this starting one looks so much like the other ones, right? So this square starts like a traditional granny square. So we're going to chain two, and then we're going to make 3 double crochets. Now chain 2. Now do that 2 more times. That's 3 double crochets in the center by chain 2, and then we will slip stitch to join that first round. All right, now slip stitch to the first double crochet and work under both loops because again it's just like a regular double crochet. We're going to, the yarn split a little bit. Oh, hold on. If only we had more Z-twist yarns for crocheters. Here we go. All right, so we have our first round. Now we want to tighten the center. There we go. Pull that so you don't lose it. So I like to spread the stitches apart. I pull the tail so I know which loop to then pull. And then this, if I keep pulling, there we go. You want to go in the opposite direction. And then it helps to flip so you can grab the loop that has tightened. Takes a little fiddling, but now you want to tighten this one first. And so if I pull this way, you pull the tail. So you want to pull that back and now pull the other way. Pull as tight as you like, and then just yank. And so now you have a nice tight center. All right, so let's put our hook back on the loop and tighten. And for the first half double crochet for each round, it is done in the same way. We're going to chain 1 and then half double crochet, and that counts as the first half double crochet cluster. So we're going to chain 1, and I make mine a little looser. You can do a chain 2, but it will create a little more space. So we're going to yarn over, we're going to work into the next stitch, pull up a loop, we're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 and make a regular double crochet. So this counts as the first half double crochet cluster, and then chain 1. And that's how you finish off each cluster. Now we're going to start in the same stitch that we just worked in, and we will for each cluster. So you yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, work into the next stitch, pull up a loop. You have 5 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 5 loops, chain 1. So we have 2 clusters made. And now we're going to work in the corner. So we're going to make 2 half double crochets, chain 2, and now make 2 half double crochets. And so we're going to do this every time we make a corner. And now we're going to do the next cluster. So starting in the next stitch, which is here and here, this is where we're going to make our first cluster. So we pull up our loop, yarn over, go through the next one, pull up a loop, that's 5 loops on the hook, yarn over, pull through all 5, and then chain 1. That's 1 cluster made. And we'll again starting in the previous stitch and then working in the next one, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, insert your hook in the next stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 5 loops, chain 1. So let's do the corner. So that's 2 half double crochets, chain 2, and then 2 half double crochets. Now we're just gonna do the same thing for the other 2 sides and then slip stitch at the beginning. And don't forget to work into that first stitch. All right, and now we're gonna slip stitch to the first cluster. So because we did the chain 1 and the half double crochet, we're going to use the space at the top here. And that's your second round. So with doing the half double crochet clusters, we're always going to turn our work. So in turning the work, because the seam is to the side, it will shift a bit as we work each round. So for this one, we're going to chain 1, and this counts here, and we're going to work into here to make the first cluster, like so, chain 1, and now make your first corner. So that's 2 half double crochets, chain 2, and then 2 half double crochets. And now starting here in the chain 1 space, so this is the chain 1 of the cluster, we're going to work in the space in between the stitches. So working in this stitch, you start your first half double crochet, yarn over, go between the stitches, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 5, chain 1. starting the same as the previous and then working to the next chain 1 space, we make our next half double crochet cluster, chain 1. I'm going to do it again, but this time we're going to work into the stitch. So this is why when referring to the pattern, which can be found at creationsbycourtney.com, it says to work into the chain 1 space or the next stitch. And this is why, because when we get to the end at that corner, we have stitches instead of chain 1s. And so we're going to make the next cluster, chain 1, and now we're back to the chain 2 of the corner. So follow those directions. That's 2 half double crochets, chain 2, followed by 2 half double crochets. And the corner is the same for each round. And so we're going to continue around these 2 sides and then here by making 4 half double crochet clusters. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And make the corner. 2 half double crochets, chain 2, 2 half double crochets. All right, so now that we're on the 4th side back to the beginning, we need to make 3 half double crochet clusters. So we're going to do them in the same way. Always worked over 2 stitches or a stitch in a chain 1 space. And then the last one. So this is the first cluster, and it starts technically with this chain 1 space, so we want to make sure we work into the right space, because if not, you can accidentally add a stitch. And always chain 1 after your cluster and then slip stitch. And that's 3 rounds. Now turn your work. For round 4, we're gonna work this way. So chain 1, and remember, this is the first cluster, this is the chain 1 space, this is the previous one. So this chain 1 counts within this space, so you want to make sure you work into the next chain 1 space for your first cluster, like so. Chain 1, working into the same space as the previous one, and then into the next one. We make our next cluster, chain 1, working in the previous chain 1 space in the next stitch, and then previous stitch and the next stitch, chain 1. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 in starting, and then we'll make the last 2 here, and so each side will have 6 clusters plus the corner. So I'll meet you back here. All right, so you've completed the other sides. Again, there's 6 clusters plus the corner on each side of round 4. And to finish off this round, again, working in the first stitch in the next chain 1 space, chain 1, working in the same space as the previous cluster. And so this is where you can accidentally increase, because it looks tempting to work in this space, but this right here is actually part of that first cluster of the previous stitch, right? So it helps sometimes to flip your work so that you can look at it. So you want to make sure that you're actually going here in between these two clusters. So we're going to work in this space here under the chain 1 of the first cluster, because again, each cluster is connected by working the previous one. So by working here, it connects it to the first one. Chain 1, and then again work into the top of that first half double crochet of the first cluster by slip stitching. Now we have 4 rounds. And let's turn our work. Well, if my yarn doesn't roll all over the place first, let's pull some yarn out. Okay. So it's okay if it seems to wave a little bit, but again, flatten a little bit and then you're back to a lovely flat square. So for round 5, because the center, that's round 1, 2, 3, 4. So for round 5, we're going to have 8 half double crochet clusters for each side. So we're going to chain 1, okay? And again, if you have to make sure you put your hook in the right place, remember, this is the first one, so this chain 1 is in this space, so you want to make sure that you're working in the next one. So it looks like you have to skip more because it's tempting to work here, because it's like, oh look, there's a chain 1. But remember, this chain 1 counts as this space here, right here. So we're going to work into the next one. Make your first half double crochet, and that counts as your first cluster. Chain 1, make your next cluster. So that's 2, chain 1, and then you make your third cluster. And then make your first corner, and again the corner is 2 half double crochets, chain 2, 2 half double crochets. And then again you start in the first stitch and the next chain 1 space for your first cluster. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then 8. And now the corner. It's 2 half double crochet, chain 2, 2 half double crochet. So repeat for the next 2 sides, and I'll meet you back here after this corner so we can finish round 5. All right, so we've made the 4th corner. Remember, there's 8 clusters for each side of round 5. So we're going to start in the first stitch and then use the next chain 1 space for that first cluster. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this last one, we want to make sure that we get it right. So again, we have 3 that we did at the beginning of the round. So working in the same chain 1 space, and then you want to make sure that you're putting this in the right space. So again, if you need to turn your work to see where to go, this was the first one, so we want to work in this space here where the hook is coming through. So we're going to yarn over and we're going to go, it's tempting to go here, but we really want to go here because look where the first cluster is here. So we want to go in this space here. And then chain 1 and slip stitch. Again, you want to make sure that you find the right spot. this is the chain 1, so you're going to work here to slip stitch to that first cluster. And so when you look at it closely, it blends in oh so well, and the seam is not really visible. So let's turn our work for round 6. And if you want to, before turning your work, because like I said, it kind of shifts and the space is a little weird, right? So again, this is the first cluster, right? Although we're working this way, if you want to, you can work slip stitch in the front loop here, because that moves you over so you're in between the second cluster and the first cluster. That way when you turn your work, you're lined up. Okay, so again, working from this space, right? We chain 1, which is the beginning of the cluster, and then we're going to put our hook in this space here, because this is the chain 1. Again, if you need to, flip your work to look at the back side of the cluster, and then you make your half double crochet for your first cluster, and then chain 1 and working in the same space as the previous one, and then working into the next chain 1 space. We're going to work our way to the corner. So for round 6, we're going to have 10 half double crochet clusters for each side. So for this first part, we're going to have a total of 6 clusters before we get to the corner. All right, so let's check. This is the first one, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Uh-oh. So this is why I was saying that you have to be careful where you put your stitches, because you might end up with too many or too few. And this is why it helps to see, because technically going over, we can work our way back to see where the other ones are going to go. So that's 1, 2, and 3. So I misspoke. We're going to go with 7. Again, make your corner. That's 2 half double crochets, chain 2, 2 half double crochets. I'm using my yarn valet today with the yarn, and it doesn't really want to work because of the way that I have the yarn just kind of stacked on there. So again, for the next 3 sides, make 10 half double crochet clusters and then the corner, and then I'll meet you back after the 4th corner. All right, so we've completed the other 3 sides and the corner, and now to finish off round 6. And starting in the next stitch to make that first cluster. That's 1, that's 2, and then 3. Remember, we did a slip stitch on the previous round to here to make us, to put us in that space in between these 2 clusters. So that's where we're going to finish off our last cluster, and you always chain 1 and then slip stitch to join. So that's 6 rounds of this square. So again, to make sure that it lines up, you can turn and then slip stitch this way, or go in the direction that you are because this is the space. Let me take the hook out. So this here is the space in between these two clusters. So, and we slip stitch to here. So by slip stitching in the back loop of the next stitch, that puts us here in this space in between these two clusters. So we'll turn our work and then chain 1, and then we're going to work here for that first half double crochet to make the first cluster, and then we're going to do another one, so that's 2 clusters, 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so we have the first cluster and then 4 more before the corner in starting round 7. So make the corner, and then continue in pattern to make 12. Oops, the ballet is sliding everywhere. I'm gonna have 12 corner, 12 half double crochet clusters corner, and I'll meet you back after that 4th corner to finish the first part of round 7. All right, please excuse the background noise. My husband's outside doing yard work. He's so loud. Okay, so now that we've come back around for round 7, again, we're gonna have 12 half double crochets for each side of round 7. So at the beginning we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're gonna make 7. Again, we're going to start in the next stitch and the next chain 1 space for the first cluster. And then we're going to make 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and like in the previous rounds, think about where this starts. So it's this space here and not over here or in between here. So in this space here for the 7th cluster. And then slip stitch to the first one. All right, so as we have 7 rounds and 1 more to go to make this an 8x8 square. So just like in the previous rounds, we want to slip stitch to make sure that we're starting in the right place, because slip stitching here, it feels like this is a chain 1 space, but this is actually part of the first cluster. And so again, we could slip stitch here, and we switch between front loop and back loop so that any extra bulk that's added goes to the wrong side of the square. And honestly, it's reversible, so you can determine whichever side you want to be the right side or the wrong side. So actually, so if you do it before turning, you'll slip stitch in the front loop like so, but I know some people prefer to turn and then do their work. So if you turn, right, so again, this is part of the first stitch, so this is the chain 1 space, right? So if you work in the back loop, you're going to work here, like so, and then you can tighten it a bit. If it looks too bulky, chain 1 and then work into the next space to make that half double crochet for round 8. And now we're going to make 6 clusters. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So depending on which way you do your clusters, right, if you slip stitch, you'll actually have more. So because I turned and then started, we can actually do 7. It happens sometimes to miscount. And now we will make the corner, 2 half double crochet, chain 2, 2 half double crochet, all in the chain 2 space. All right, and so you're going to have 14 half double crochet clusters, corner, so repeat that, right, 3 times, and then I'll meet you back at this corner to finish off round 8, and then we will be done with our square. All right, now that we have completed the 4th corner, we're going to finish off round 8. So we have 1, 2, 3. And if you're like me, if you have to pull the yarn out while you're making a cluster, it helps to frog it and then just redo it so that it doesn't tighten too much as you pull from the yarn ball or skein. So that's 3 made. 4, 5, and again, you want to make sure that you put this in the right spot. So this and this is part of the first cluster, so you're going to work here. And then slip stitch to the first one. And again, if your work crumples like so, that means there's likely too many stitches here. So this is why you want to count as you work. But again, we started with the first one, then 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that means we made 6 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 for 14. And there you have it. That's all there is to this lovely square. And if you want to refer to written instructions, definitely hop over to creationsbycourtney.com. It will be linked below in the description, as well as you can buy the ad-free PDF from any of my pattern shops, Ravelry, Etsy, and Lovecrafts. And definitely don't forget to check out the Fun Blog Hop hosted by Madame Stitch and Eclair Makery. It is such a fun event, and I hope you have fun making all of these squares. So keep stitching, and I'll see you soon.